So, hello there. This may drag on for a bit given the subject matter, and I'll be referencing past versions of the game quite a bit. So in the description and the comments you'll find timestamps to different subtopics, so to speak. So it's been a few months now since Hellgate London's release on Steam. This has always been a very polarizing game, and by now people seem to have already made up their minds on it. This is also a game that's very close to my heart, so out of fear over not being objective enough, I didn't really want to review it. It's still being discussed on various platforms though, so I figured I could provide what's hopefully a useful perspective. So first things first, and hopefully along with some insight on where some of my opinions come from, my CV. I first picked up this game in 2008 and became involved with the community in 2010 on the Hellgate House forums. So I didn't have the opportunity to play the original multiplayer game, but I did become involved with Revival and the single-player modder community. That's where I saw the release of Hellgate Global in 2011 and played it for many years until its eventual shutdown. During its lifespan I mostly championed summoners and hopefully achieved some milestones for the class. I also wrote class guides and helped fund and run community events. Ever since the downfall of Global I've been involved with London 2038. With that said, what's Hellgate's Steam release? Deep down it's Hellgate London, a game which you've probably assumed I like, so it's bound to have some saving graces. Hellgate was a fantastic, albeit incomplete, dungeon crawler ARPG, a spiritual successor to Diablo. It aspired to become a much greater game than it had the chance to. Either way, this Steam release is essentially Hellgate Global, the second multiplayer-only version of Hellgate London, except it's single-player. It's this port process that I believe creates most of the game's flaws. Naturally, I did buy this release as soon as it became available. Despite all of Global's shortcomings, it was a version of the game that I had played for years, so nostalgia was a given. My impressions were less than great, hence this review after all. So first things first, to get the most visible letdown out of the way, graphics. Global had downgraded graphics, presumably to make the game more accessible to a wider market. For some reason this change was kept in the Steam version. Even if one does not mind it, it's objectively a downgrade from the original's out-of-the-box graphics, which I believe shouldn't be there. That aside, Global had already massively altered the base game, and part of the transformation involved rewriting dialogues, which was not always a clean process. Though my memory may be unreliable, the Steam version seemed to have even more badly written or translated dialogue, typos, odd phrasings, and others. It might well be that this client isn't actually the English version of Global, but one that was translated from Korean, presumably, into English again. Regardless, at this point I was still just happy to have access to a slice of Global, so I wasn't actively looking to nitpick. But both of those inevitably caught my eye. Very soon into the game I was confronted with FPS drops and eventually the dreaded 1 FPS bug. This was also something that Global had, in some areas, which I couldn't believe had made it into a single-player version of the game. But it did. To top off Global remnants, the game also includes achievements that are obviously impossible to do in single-player, such as PvP ones, a disabled shared stash, massive XP demands, and visibly oddly photoshopped interfaces such as the upper end of the inventory. Furthermore, the Global version of the game gave the transmogrifying cube more uses than the original game did. Namely, it could be used to access some endgame bosses, like Burial in the Abyss and Imhotep in Tokyo. So I was understandably shocked to see that the cube was also dysfunctional at best and broken at worst. This in itself is a massive issue that I imagine would be a deal-breaker for many. A quick note on this front, by the way, there is a mod fix for some of those cube issues now, link in the description. Lastly, in terms of balance, the Steam version does come with a certain vital flaw. At its core it's Global, and Global was a multiplayer game. Being free to play on top of it, its changes were often aimed at generating revenue. With this in mind, the Nanoforge was changed from a device that increases item levels to one that increased base damage. It had a chance to fail though. Failure at later levels destroyed items, and players could buy premium items to avoid losing their gear. At least in their credit, preservatives, said premium items, are also available in the Steam version. So this system became the new foundation of improving one's performance, and since making players use it was imperative, many class changes are based on it. As a glaring example, engineers and summoners were both pushed away from minions and towards personal damage, which could be increased massively more through the nanoforge than minions could be through in-game means. This also means that practically such concepts as skill groups and synergies that the original game introduced were overshadowed or underdeveloped in favor of increasing base damage in this way. This may make class design seem bland, or at the very least more simple than it could have been. As far as I've seen, next to no changes were made to this concept, thus the Steam version has an overall balanced landscape that was designed for a free-to-play multiplayer game. This is certainly not appropriate for a single-player game, to me anyway. It's not all doom and gloom, however. Global did have its perks compared to the original game, which also made it into the Steam version. Global addressed pacing by introducing the unreleased messenger system. Killing enough enemies in an area spawned a boss with random abilities, which made slaying endless demons more variable and more rewarding. Unique item blueprints were also introduced to the early game, which made progressing faster. It had toggled difficulty modes, which allowed players to adjust their game according to their gear and skill, and a reset button which made resetting desired areas easier, though the reset button is apparently broken in this version. It introduced quality of life items too, in the form of the auto-dismantler and the radar. The former dismantled items automatically, as you might have assumed, and the latter highlighted champion and boss enemies in the map. It also added the auto-analyzer, which analyzed many items at once. It also included new gear such as set items, some class changes, of which not all were bad or based on the nanoforge, and others. But most importantly, it included new content. Now, since this will probably be the biggest incentive to buy this game, let me just say that this is quite the mixed bag. Back when they first acquired the game, the developers received what was Flagship's Patch 2.0, when the Abyss was first being introduced, and specifically Build 4 of the Test Center version. Abbreviated as TCV4, this is the version of the game on which London 2038 is now based. This was of course in an incomplete state. Flagship shut down well before finalizing many changes they had begun, including class overhauls. Thus, even as early as in the Korean version of the game, 2.0 was scrapped entirely, and the game was reverted to 1.3. This was the new foundation for a game that now targeted a new audience. So, along with rewriting much of the plot, the new owners massively changed the standalone Abyss expansion and introduced a new version of it into the new storyline. The storyline now was Hellgate London, then Second Attack, then Abyss, then Tokyo. Stonehenge remained standalone as it was before. The Second Attack, to put it mildly, is a collage. They essentially reused old assets and bosses from London and the Old Abyss, and created a linear series of boss fights that would serve as a gateway into the rest of the story. It is technically new content, but personally I could never consider it equal to Stonehenge, the Abyss, or Tokyo. It's a bland one-way boss rush framed by recycled assets that I never really enjoyed going through. The Abyss is much more decent, of course. It actually ties into the story now, though whether it should is subjective, and it's much more feature-rich than the old version. This would be a fantastic introduction of newcomers to the Abyss content, but the cube issues mentioned before do exist. Lastly, Tokyo. Tokyo was certainly a great piece of content, even if it was rough around the edges. It's visually distinct and quite more challenging than most content. Much of its difficulty was likely aimed at promoting the premium nanoforge at the time, but it does provide a difficult endgame goal. This would be a great way to end Hellgate London's expansions and story, but unfortunately it too is incomplete. In Global, defeating Kaibutsnatan, I probably butchered that pronunciation, the last Tokyo boss anyway, yielded a quest item that had no use, simply because the expansion was literally half done. The story reflected this abrupt end by not actually concluding either. I would try to finish the Steam version to check if this was somehow addressed, but the FPS bug still stops me, and going by how little has been changed from the global version, I'd assume with some certainty that it hasn't. So, disregarding global entirely, what is the Steam version compared to the original game? It's a single-player game balanced around a multiplayer environment. It has downgraded graphics, language issues, disabled features, a broken cube, and the FPS bug. On the plus side, to be fair, it has some quality of life features, some new gear, and new content. So, is it worth your money? Probably not, but maybe. It's quite unstable, and for many it's borderline unplayable. Intel-based systems seem to be more susceptible to the FPS bug from what I've read. Still, it does offer more content, and is arguably more streamlined than the original game. And being Hellgate, it's of course a fine, addictive game. Still, I couldn't in good conscience recommend this version of the game to newcomers to the franchise. At the very least, I'd suggest getting the original game first. They say less is more, and for many it would probably be a more fun experience, especially since modding support also exists for it. Players who have played global or other versions of the game could buy it for nostalgia's sake like I did. It does offer a glimpse back into content that doesn't exist elsewhere, even with all its flaws. Lastly, in terms of this version's future, I know many people are actually hoping that there will be more development. However, I've seen enough of the owner's record that I can't really hope so. Global was abandoned within its first 2 years of life and was shut down. The first greenlight attempt of the game was abandoned. The mobile FPS Hellgate game was underdeveloped and eventually abandoned and shut down. The Hellgate 2 project was cancelled. The Steam version was clearly underdeveloped and the FPS bug seems to not even be acknowledged. So I can't really have hope for this one. If you can, I honestly wish your hopes come to pass, but I'd say it seems quite unlikely. So there you have it. I do hope you found this review useful. As always, thank you for watching.